Hello and welcome to the ultimate Airtable tutorial for 2025. In today's video, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about Airtable so that by the end of this video, you will be an Airtable pro. We're going to start with the basics and we're going to work our way up to the more advanced topics inside of Airtable. So if you're a complete beginner, you can kind of just watch this all the way through the first time. But if you're an intermediate user or you're already an Airtable expert, then you can click around using the chapters below this video, which I've chunked out super well for you so that you can find exactly what you're looking for. Now, before we kick this off, you might be wondering, how are you using Airtable, Carter? And I'm actually using Airtable as a way to capture all of the data that I have for my automations. You see, getting the data in one place is half of the battle. You can't really automate anything or really do anything with that data if it's stuck somewhere else on the internet. So I use Airtable as a way to capture all of the different data in my life and bring it into one unified second brain. And you could use it for something as simple as just taking notes or keeping tabs on your to-do list. But get ready, because today I'm going to up-level your skill sets. I'm going to add a new tool to your toolbox, and you are going to learn everything that you need to know about Airtable. AI and automations are going to be a massive theme in 2025. And the people that implement AI and automations are going to save heaps of time, and they're going to be running miles around their competitors. So that's why I've created this free community over on school.com where I do a weekly Q&A call to answer all of your questions about Airtable, AI, and automations. And I also include early access to videos just like this one before they even hit YouTube. So not only are you getting early access, but I'm also including some bonuses that I'm going to be sharing later in this video, like a ChatGPT prompt that helps you write better Airtable scripts. Those are things that you can only get if you're part of the community. So if you're interested in joining this free community and taking this free opportunity, then I highly recommend clicking the link below this video. I'll have a link in the description and the top pinned comment to join the group. So how much money is this going to cost you? And is the free plan enough to make it through this tutorial? Well, the good news is that 95% of this tutorial is going to be completely done on the free plan. The free plan is more than enough to learn Airtable. In case you do want to scale up operations or you want to work with Airtable even deeper, then you can upgrade. And I'm going to cover the pricing plans really quick before we jump into this. So if you go to airtable.com and you click on pricing in the menu, you should see the plans appear. The free plan, as I said, is more than enough to get started and to learn Airtable. Now, you'll want to upgrade to the team plan when you have a bunch of records in your bases. These are the rows of information within your base. The free plan gives you 1,000 records per base. This is usually more than enough for most use cases. But if you do have a more intensive use case that requires a ton of data, you might want to upgrade to the team plan or even the business plan, which gives you 125,000 records. While the free plan only gives you 100 automation runs, upgrading to the team plan is going to give you 25,000 automation runs per month. You'll also get a massive increase in the amount of attachments you can store in your base. When you upgrade to the team plan, you're also going to get extensions and scripting so that you can do advanced searching within Airtable, or you can do some other fancy automations with your records. You'll get a Gantt chart and a timeline view, which is great for teams that are working together on big projects that require one thing to get done before the next can start. And you're also going to get some expanded styling, coloring, formatting options when you upgrade to the team plan. When you're ready to upgrade your Airtable account, you can hit try for free, and then you can fill out your work email right here. I'm just going to hit continue. I entered my name here, and I also entered a password, and once I'm ready to go, I can just hit continue. On this next screen, you can fill out some custom information like the organization that you're with and the industry type. Then you can also enter your team type. For me, I'm just going to put in other or personal. Now I'll hit continue. And if you want to invite your team members, you can here, but you can do this later too. So don't worry too much about getting this done right now. I'm just going to hit skip. You can choose your favorite color. Okay, this is kind of getting a little bit more fun. We can kind of customize our Airtable exactly how we want it. I'm just going to make it gray for now. I'll keep it boring for the tutorial, but you guys can pick whatever color you want. Now it's going to put us through this app building workflow right here. And for right now, I'm just going to go with course management. I'll hit next, and it's going to generate an app for us right out of the gate, but you don't necessarily have to use this app. This is just part of their onboarding process. And I'm just going to hit the X button in the corner and exit this process now that my account is created. Now you'll see that you have to verify your email. So head over to your email and verify it just to make sure that your account is all set up and ready to go. Once your account is confirmed, you'll see your email has been verified here and you can close that out. Now let's talk about the structure of Airtable. There's three sort of objects that you're going to have to be thinking of when it comes to building an Airtable, and I don't want to make this too confusing, so I'm going to be using a few basic examples to explain this, and then we'll dive in and I'll show you exactly how all of these things work throughout this tutorial. So the workspace portion right here, this is basically whatever silo of your life that this is in or whatever business this is. For me, I could just create a personal workspace. So the workspace that contains all of my other bases and my data, the different tables. This is basically just the outer shell of whatever you're going to be creating. And then within a workspace, you have bases. Now, these bases are essentially just another silo that you can use, another way to organize. And just to show you a quick example, one base might be library. Within that library, you could have authors as a table, and you could also have books. It's good to think about these bases as anything that you're going to have tables within that you want to interlink. So if we wanted to link authors and books, we could do that, and vice versa. You could also link your books to authors. Then maybe I have another base for fitness, and maybe I have plans in one table, and I want to relate it over to workouts. This would be a use case where you'd want to put these within the same base because they are going to be related. Now, you don't have to relate anything. You could have a base that just has one table in it, and it doesn't necessarily have to relate. But this is just a good way to think about how to organize your bases, right? Do the tables have any value to each other, or are they completely separate? That's the question that you want to ask yourself when you're creating them. So now we'll jump back into Airtable and we'll get to building. The first thing that you're going to want to do is add a workspace. So over here in the left-hand sidebar, you can hit create a workspace. Now for workspace, we're just going to name this personal, just as I did in the example diagram. And if you want to edit the settings of your workspace, you can click on these three dots in the upper right-hand corner. You can rename your workspace. You can edit the description. I'll just add a quick description. This is where my personal items are. You can also go into workspace settings here. And if you open up workspace settings, this is where you can turn AI on and off for your workspace. I'm just going to turn it off because I'm not going to be going over the AI features within Airtable. The Airtable AI hasn't been super helpful. This doesn't mean that we don't use AI alongside Airtable, but typically you'll use something else to connect your AI features to it. And I can also see the different quotas here, like my automations and how many creators/editors that I have within my workspace. There's some other settings over here for billing details and whatnot, but I'm just going to go back over to my workspace. If you want to favorite your workspace so that it's always showing up in the sidebar, you can click this little star right here. Now, as you can see, it's right up here in my home page. If I wanted to share my workspace, I could hit share right here, and this is where you can add people as a creator, an editor, a commenter, read only, or an owner. If you don't want to invite them by email like this, then you can just create a link, and this will allow you to set up the invite. You can also gate it by different email types. So if you have your organization, you can just do organization.com, and then you can hit create link and you can send that out to people so that they can sign up even easier. I'm going to close this for now as I'm not going to be adding any team members. So now that you've set up your Airtable account, you've chosen a plan to start out with, and you've even created your first workspace. Now we're going to create our first base. So if you remember right, it's good to silo these bases off into different areas within your workspace. So we're going to go with that example of creating a library, and I want to have all of the authors and the books in there to keep track of them all. This is just going to serve as an example for this tutorial so that this makes more sense to you and so that you can carry it forward into your use cases. So to do this, we will go to our personal workspace and then we'll hit create. From there, you're just gonna hit start from scratch. And now you'll have your untitled base. This looks like a lot, but don't worry, I'm going to show you exactly how everything here works. And that's what this tutorial is all about. We're just going to take it step by step, so this is easy for you to understand. So the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is just close out this Getting Started tab and hit skip on the tutorial, hit got it. I'm here to help you guys through all of this. And then if this extensions tab pulls up here, just close that out for now as well. Let's edit the look and feel of our base. To do that, you can just go up to this drop down up here by untitled base and you can give it a name. I'm just gonna call it library and I'm going to go with purple. We'll go to the icons here and I'll search for an icon. I'm just gonna go with a book. And then you can add a base guide. This is just going to be some information about your base so that people know how to use it. So I'm just going to say this is the library. If you want to star this base so that it shows up in a convenient place on your home screen, you can click the star right here and then just click away from the settings. Once you have your base created, you can add your tables within that base. So in order to do that, you can add tables right here. By default, it gives you one table called table 1. I'll just click on it and I'll rename the table and we're just going to rename it to books. And it's asking, what should we call each record? I could call each record a book, but for now, I'm just going to keep it as record since that's the term that we're going to be using. I'll hit save and we'll add our authors table in a little bit. Now, out of the box, it gives us these different fields for our records. It gives us name, notes, assignee, and status. The records are the horizontal lines going across here, and each record gets its own name, its own note, its own assignee, its own status in this case. While the fields are the vertical columns that describe the records. So we have name, notes, assignee, and status. Now, each table has a special field, and that is this name field right here. So if I double click on this name field, you're going to see that it says this is the table's primary field. So I can change the name of the name column, but no matter what, you have to have this first field. So for this field, I'm just going to call it books. I'm going to leave it as single line text, but you can also change to some of these other ones. It's best to just leave this primary field as single line text though, and then you can add a description if you wanted to. This is a bit overkill and it's optional, but I'm just going to show you how it works so that you get the gist. This is where we put the book title. I'm going to hit save. And now if I hover over this, you can see exactly what this is made for. This whole field is going to be for book titles. So now I could start entering some books in here. So I'm just going to write in the title of some of my favorite books. So now I've got these titles of these books in here, and we can add different information in the form of these fields. To add a new record, the easiest way is just to hit this plus button right here, and that will add a record. You can also hit Shift Enter if you want to add another record in, and you can just do that as many times as you want if you have it selected there. I'm just going to highlight all of these by clicking and dragging, and then I'll right click and hit Delete All Selected Records. Now, notes, assignee, and status might be helpful for books, but for me, I'm just going to delete these fields to begin with by right-clicking them and then hitting Delete Field. Now we're starting completely fresh. So now I'm going to add in some fields and I'm going to explain each field that you can use inside of Airtable. To add a field, you're just going to hit the plus button up here, right next to this books column, and you can just type in the field name. So for the field name on this one, we want to create a description. And I'm going to go with the long text option right here. Now, long text allows you to just basically write longer text in there than the short text one. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. You can use generate values with AI here. I very seldom use this feature, even though I am a huge fan of AI. I'm not a huge fan of the Airtable AI feature. I'd rather just use my own models and plug them into Airtable, which is something that we do over at AI Foundations. We show you guys how to set that up. Another thing you can do is you can enable rich text formatting on these long text items. If you want to add like bolded text or you want to add italic text or anything like that, rich text formatting is going to come in handy. So that's on right now, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. I'll hit Create Field. Now here I can just write a brief description of each of these books. So now I have descriptions of all of my books, and that's how you use long text. The next field that we'll look at is the attachment field. Now, this is the one that has a 1 GB limit per base if you're on the free plan. If we wanted to add an attachment here, like an image of the book cover or something like that, we could do so. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add an attachment and we'll go ahead and give it a name of book cover. And then I'll hit create field. Now, if I click into this, as you can see, I can upload a file or I can drag and drop a file. If I just hit add attachment, it's going to open up this window right here. And I can also use a link to pull this in. So if I have a link to the image of the cover for Reality Transurfing, I can just paste it here, send that off. And as you can see, it pulled in the book cover. If I click on it, I can see the book cover in full right here. You can also leave comments on these or download it. You can even rename the attachment. I'll just rename it to Transurfing cover.jpg. If you want to get out of here, you can just click away. And that's basically how you set up an attachment. I'm going to go through and add the covers for these other books now. Now, what if I wanted to keep track of which book was my favorite? I could do that with a checkbox field. So the next field that we're going to look at is the checkbox. I'll just hit add field and I'm going to type in favorite for the name. And then I'm going to search in the find a field type checkbox. Here I can click checkbox and you can select the style as well. As you can see, you can upgrade the style if you upgrade to the team plan, which allows you to actually put in like a yellow star or something like that, but it doesn't change the functionality of it. This check mark will work just fine for favorites. You can set a default. When you add a new record to your table, it would be checked by default if you clicked this, but I'm just going to leave that off so that we don't have it favorited by default. I'll hit create field, and then I could come in here and I could check the box on any of my favorite books. If I wanted to uncheck it, I could just click it again. The next field that I want to take a look at is multi-select. And this is great for anything that you want to put multiple tags on. So we'll actually do just that. We'll do tags for our books. I'll just call this tags and I'll type in multi and you'll see multiple select. Click on that. And then you can add options in here for the things that you want to be able to select. So I could add things in here like slow burn or helpful or classic, for instance. And if you turn color coded off, then they're all just going to be blank, boring items, but you can also color code them and you can change the color that defines each of them right here. So that could be orange. This one could be purple. Classic could be yellow. And you can even add things in here like the genre of the book. So you could put self-help, coding, business, those sorts of things. And then just like the checkbox option, you can add default options, but in this case, there's no need to do that. I'm just going to hit create field. And now if I click on these tags right here and I click the plus button, I can select multiple tags that describe each of these books. So for Transurfing, let's go with slow burn, helpful, self-help. And if I drag this out, you can see everything there. For Blue Ocean Strategy, let's go with helpful, business. And with Python Crash Course, let's go with helpful and coding. And as you can see, that's kind of how tags work. It's just another way to organize all of your records. Now, similar to the multi-select, there's also a single select option. And the single select option is good if you only want it to show one value at a time. So this would be great for tracking progress. Let's say we wanted to track things that we haven't started yet, things that we're already reading, and books that are already actually completed. To do this kind of tracking, a single select is super helpful. So we'll go ahead and add a field, and I'm just going to type in status. And here for the field type, we can search single select, or you can click on single select here, and we can add our options. So for the first one, I'm just going to go with the red, and I'm going to type in not started. For the next option, I'm going to type reading, and we'll make this one yellow. And then I'm going to type in complete, and we'll make this one green. And I'll create field, and I can set the status for these books. I can set the ones that aren't started, the ones that I'm reading, and the ones that are complete. So it's kind of like a toggle select. You're not going to be able to have multiple with the single select like you are over here with the multiple select. Next, let's take a look at the user field. So if I click add field here and I type in user, I can assign a user to a specific field. And you can even select a default option. The default option could be current user. So whoever's actually adding the field, it would show the current user. or you could add yourself or any of your other teammates here. I'm just going to add Carter Sriracha as the default user since I'm the only user that's using this library. And I'm just going to type in owner. So this will be like the owner of the book. And you can also select if you wanted to add multiple users. So if you wanted to allow multiple users to be part of this library, you could do so with this toggle here. I'm just going to stick to a single user and hit create field. Now, because these weren't all created when this was the default, you're not going to see anything here. But if I click into it, I can change the user that owns this book. So I'll just go ahead and add myself there. Now, if I add a new one, you'll see that by default, it adds Carter Sriracha. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And now we'll move on to the next field, which is the date field. So if I type in date here in the find field, I can add a publishing date. Let's imagine I want to keep track of when these books came out. So let's just click into it. And I can actually go and find exactly what day this came out on, and I can select it. So obviously these are going to be inaccurate, but I'm just putting random information right now just to move this video along. The next fields aren't entirely useful for books, but I did want to share them regardless, and we'll go ahead and delete them after I show you. So the next field that I wanted to share is the phone field. So this is just phone number. You can click on it, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just phone number formatting. So if you were doing a CRM or something like that, and you had a bunch of clients in here, or you were trying to keep track of sales, this is a great use case. So I could just name this phone and create the field. And then if I type in a phone number, it'll even format it after I hit enter, like so. Let's go ahead and click on this, hit edit field, and I can actually change the field right here. We'll just go ahead and change it to email, and I'll hit save. Now it's going to ask if I want to convert. I'm just going to hit convert, and obviously this isn't an email, so I'll rename that to email and hit save, and I can put in emails now. And as you can see, it just underlines it and it makes it clickable as well. This allows me to open up my browser to go ahead and send an email. Now we'll go ahead and delete this field. And the next field that we're going to take a look at is the URL field. So a URL is basically just the link to a website. So what I could do with this is I could create a field where it brings me to the Amazon page, or maybe it could be a link to my notes. I'll just call it Amazon page so that I can find exactly where to buy this book, or I can recommend it to my friends quickly. For example, I could just paste the link to Reality Transurfing, hit enter, and now when I click on this link, it's going to open up the Amazon page for me and show me that book. And I can use this link to figure out how many pages are in this book for the next field type. Because for the next field, I want to add a page number, or how many pages are in the book. So we'll just call this pages. And for the field type, I'm going to select number. And if I click on number here, there are some formatting things that I can set. Like if I want to get rid of the decimal, I can just go to 0 decimal places, or I could add more decimal places if I wanted to. And you can select a preset here as well. There's a few other formatting setups here, and you can allow negative numbers if you wanted to. You can also add a default number, pretty much just like any of these other steps, but it's pretty basic. You don't need to overcomplicate it. It's just a number. So I'll go ahead and hit create field. And now I can add how many pages are here. To find this, I can go to the Amazon page and I should see page number here. So there's 760 pages in this book. I'll just get rid of that pages part and we'll just keep the 760. So that's basically how this works with adding a number field. Similar to number, I can also add a currency field if I want to keep track of the currency and have it formatted properly. So if I hit currency, I can add the price of the book and then I can hit create field. Right now, the paperback is going for $58.31. So I can just type 58.31 and hit enter. And as you can see, it's going to add the dollar there. If I want to edit the formatting, I can just hit edit field and I can change the currency symbol right here. I'll just go ahead and hit save and I'll resize this so that it's a bit smaller and it actually fits. Now there are some other number fields that you can add. So I just want to show those really quick. The first one is %. So if I type in percent and I click on it, I could add a name for my percentage. And then you can edit the formatting here and create your field. And if I add in a number now, it's just going to add the percent sign next to it. So it's just properly formatted for me. I'll go ahead and delete this field. And the other one that you can add is duration. So if I type duration, you'll see duration. Here I can set up the precision from hours or smaller or days. I'm going to go with hours or smaller just to show you how this works. And for the duration format, there's a bunch of different types of formats that I can use for this. I'll just go with the basic hour minute, and I'll just call this estimated read time and hit create field. And let's just say it's 14 hours, and then I'll put a colon and 30 minutes. If I hit enter, it's going to format that properly. And now I can tell that it's 14 hours and 30 minutes. I could also come in here and edit the field, and I could change the duration formatting. So we could go into seconds if we wanted to and hit save, and that would just add the seconds here for us. And then we can edit that if we wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and delete this since it's a bit redundant. Next, we're going to look at ranking our books. Type in rating. And if you see this little rating field, you can click on it and you can select how many stars you want to be available. I'm just going to go with up to 5 stars, and you can select the styling if you have the upgraded team plan. I'm just going to go with the basic though. That's fine. And I'll actually call this rating. That's fine. I'll hit create field. And now I can select how many stars the book was. So if I go through here, each one can have a different star rating. Now I'm going to go over the 5 dynamic fields. So if I click the plus button right here, these are basically fields that fill themselves out. The first one that I wanted to share with you guys is called Autonumber. So if I search for that field type, it's just going to pull it up right here, and I can click on it. And I'm just going to call this book ID. Reason being is this is going to be a unique identifier for each of your books if you use this book ID here with the auto number. So if I hit add, it's just going to make it 4. Now, let's say that I deleted this, just right click and delete record, and then I add a new one. It's going to automatically go to 5 and 6 because it's only pulling in a unique auto numbering. It's not going to pull in any of the previous IDs, even if they already existed. So you can always count on this auto number being unique. This is great if you need another identifier for coding or using the Airtable API later on. And you might be able to come up with a use case for this as well. Next, we have the last modified fields. So if I type in last modified, you'll see both of these. Last modified by, which is going to pull the last user that edited this record, and the last modified time, which is going to pull the last time that it was edited. So I'll pull in last modified time, and I'll call this last edited, and I'll hit create field. And this is just going to show that this was last edited at 9:10 p.m. That was when I added the rating, I believe. So if I make the rating a 2-star now, as you can see, it upgrades to 9:12 p.m. So anytime that I make a change here, last edited is going to update to the current date and time. I'll go ahead and delete this one, and we'll add the other dynamic one for last modified. I'm going to go ahead and type in last modified, and I should see last modified by, and I'm just going to call this last user to edit, and I'll hit create field. And as you can see, this is just going to keep it as my user, just like it is on owner over here, except this one is going to change when somebody else comes in here and edits one of these records if they do. I'll delete this for now. And next, I want to pull in the created by and created time fields. These are going to do the same thing that last modified by and last modified time did, except these are going to pull when the record was actually created, who created it, and what time was it created at. So if I hit the plus button and I type in created, I should see created by and created time. I can select created by, and I can type user that added it and create field. And we could also come in here, edit that property, and we could change it to created time. And I could change this right here to created time. And you can edit the time format. You can include time, or you can just go with date if you wanted to. You can even display the time zone. Use the same time zone for all collaborators if you want to select one. Let's just go with the Eastern time, and I'll go ahead and display the time zone. Why not? All right, let's hit save. And now, as you can see, it's going to give the time that each of these was created, which was back at 8:31 p.m. And it shows that it was Eastern Standard Time. The final basic field that we're going to look at is the barcode field. So if you're tracking inventory, or let's say you're actually running a real library and you need to keep track of the barcodes, you could hit the plus button right here, type in barcode, hit create field, then you can add it in here. And if you have your scanner connected to your computer, you can just hit Control F on your page, and then it will automatically fill into here and it will find that item, like so, if you scan the item. So now it has that selected and you can see exactly which record it's talking about when scanned. So if you had a massive database of different barcodes in here, you'd be able to find the record by barcode. Pretty useful if you're scanning something in the real world. And I bet there's a lot of other great use cases for this as well. So far, we've set up our workspace, our base, and we've created our first table. I've even gone into all of the fields, or at least all of the basic fields that you can use inside of Airtable. But now we're going to get into some of the more advanced fields that you can use in Airtable, such as linking records. A good example for this will be linking authors to books. So that's what we're going to be doing. First, we'll create our author table, and then I'll show you guys how you can link the records from your authors table over to the books. In order to create another table, you can just click on the plus button up here, and then you can hit start from scratch. And I'll just call this authors, and I'll hit save. And now we have our authors table. I'm just going to rename the name column to authors. And for now, I'm just going to delete these other fields. Now let's enter the names of the authors of all of these books. So I've listed out the 4 authors here, and now I'm just going to hit the plus button and I'm going to type into the field type link, and you'll see link to another record. If you click on this, it's going to show you the tables that you have available to you to link to. You can link to the same table if you want to relate things within one table, or in this case, we're going to be linking to books. So I'll click books, and here where it says allow linking to multiple records, I'm going to allow that so that we can link to multiple different books for each author if we add more books to our library that have the same author. If you want to limit record selection to a view, then you can click this button, and then you won't be able to link the record from the books table. You'll only be able to link them from this authors table. But I'm going to leave that off because I want to be able to link either direction. So I'll go ahead and name this books and hit create field. Now it's going to ask if I want to add some lookup fields, but I'm just going to skip this for now because we'll be discussing this in a moment. Now, if I click into this books cell right here, you're going to see this plus button pop up. From there, I can hit plus and I can link this record here, Vadim Zeeland, to his book, Reality Transurfing. So I'll just click Reality Transurfing, and now the book is linked. Now let's go ahead and add the authors for the other books. The Blue Ocean Strategy has 2 authors, so I'm just linking both of them here. And then Eric Mathis is the author of Python Crash Course. So now these are all linked together. And if I wanted to, I could click into this and click on the book, and it's going to pull up that page for said book. I'm going to click away. And the next field that we're taking a look at is the Rollup field. So this is going to allow us to roll up information from each of these books into columns in the authors table. So let's say I wanted to just see which books I'm currently reading. I could just hit the plus button, and here I could type in currently reading so I can see which authors I'm currently reading, and I'll come in here and hit edit field, and we'll search for lookup. Click on lookup, and now I can choose the field that I want to look up and add here. So the field that I'm looking for is status, because I want to see what the status of the book is and I want to see what I'm currently reading. If you want to filter this, you can click this button right here, and you can set it so that books contains reading, I think is what we had it set up as. I might be wrong on that, but let's just try this and hit save. And it looks like they're not coming through. So let's see what I had it as. Yeah, I had it as reading. So it should be showing reading for Blue Ocean Strategy on both of these. But let's just go in and edit the field. And I'm just going to make it is reading. And that's the issue. It needs to be status is reading. There we go. That should fix it. Now I'm just going to hit save. And as you can see, it shows which books that I'm currently reading from which author here. Next, we'll look at the count field. So as I said before, the Blue Ocean Strategy has 2 authors, W. Chan Kim and Renee Mawborn. So if I wanted to count how many authors the Blue Ocean Strategy has, just as an example for showing you this property, we could do that in the books table. And I could just scroll over. And as you can see, we now have these other fields here. We have authors and authors too. That's because I messed it up the first time. So let's just delete this first one. And we can rename this to authors. You should just have one if you did that properly. But the point is here I can see that there's one record here that's linked, and this one has 2 records linked, while this one also has 1. If I wanted to create a count field, there's a field for that. So if I hit the plus button right here and I type in count, I can click on that and I can count whichever source I want. So if I count authors, let's just name this author count. I could hit create field. And now it's going to show me that there's 1 author for the book Reality Transurfing. There's 2 authors for the book Blue Ocean Strategy, and there's 1 author for Python Crash Course. The next field that we're going to look at is the formula field. So if I click on add new field here and I type in formula, you'll see this one pop up. So formula is super robust in what you can do with it. But I'm just going to show you a basic example. So I'm just going to create a nice little changing status for when we update our rating here. So for 5 stars, I just want it to say exceptional. For 4 stars, we'll have it say, good. And then anything below that will say it's not so good or something like that. So I'm just going to call this user's opinion. And I'll click on the formula there. Now, before you start typing your formulas, they have this Learn More button here. So you can click on this Learn More button, and it's going to tell you all about Airtable's formulas. So if you want to dig in and see the syntax and what it's all about and get a better understanding of this stuff before you dive too deep into it, then I recommend using this here. We're going to be using the if function. So here in the formula box, I can just start by typing if, and then I can do an open parenthesis, and that'll make it 2 parentheses there. And I'm just going to type in rating. And as you can see, the rating field pops up here. So I can do if rating, and then I'll do equals 5, which I assume is what they use for the 5-star here. I'll then add a comma, then is basically what the comma means. So it's like saying if rating equals 5, then we'll just say exceptional. And then I'm going to come to the end here after exceptional, and I'm going to put another comma if I want to add a new if statement. And then I'll just enter down just to keep things organized here. And I'm going to type in my next if. So if rating equals 4, then good. We'll do this again, add a comma after good. And then I'll hit enter and I'll put if rating is less than or equal to 3, we'll have it say, I guess that means it's not so good. And then for anything other than that, we're just going to put empty because it probably doesn't have a rating if it's not anything 5. So now I'll hit create field. And as you can see, we have exceptional, good, exceptional. And if I change this to say a 3-star, it should change it to And it looks like my issue was that I didn't have the less than or equal to set up right. There was a space in there or something. So I just changed that around. I went over to the documentation on the Learn More and I saw exactly how they had it written. Now let's go ahead and save. And as you can see, now this works on 1 through. So that's just one example of how to use the formula field. If you get creative, I know you'll be able to do some amazing things with formulas. Next, we're going to dive into views inside of Airtable. You can think of views as different ways to see your data that's in each of your tables. So views make it way nicer to visualize your data because not everything looks nice in a table. You might want it in a calendar or a gallery view. So you can create a bunch of different views for the same data, and then you can look at it in different ways. Let me show you what I mean. So here we have our books in a grid view, and by default, it's just named grid view. But if I want to change the name of this view, I can just double click on it and I can name this Table of Books. Now I can close this. Now, I know that these publishing dates aren't accurate, but let's say we wanted to see our publishing dates on a calendar view. If I wanted to do that, I could just hit the calendar right here and I could just call it whatever I want. So let's just call it publishing dates, and I can make it collaborative so that all collaborators that I have in my account can use this. Or if I have a team account, I can make it personal or locked. Let's just go ahead and create the new view. And it's going to ask us, what date field do you want to use? Because you need a date field in order to make this work. That's why I've chose to use the publishing date as an example. So if I click on this, I can see it as created time or publishing date. Those are the only date fields that I have. So let's just select publishing date, hit done. And now, as you can see, Reality Transurfing is showing up in my calendar on the 3rd of September. And I can toggle between the months up here in the right-hand corner. So I can click around and I can find when the other ones were published, like so. If I click on these, it's just going to open it up and it's going to allow me to change the publishing date, or I can even drag things between dates to make it simpler for changing the date. If I want to customize how this is showing up, I can hit Customize Labels right here, and I can choose what I want to show inside of the calendar. Let's say I wanted to see the description. I could just toggle this on, and now it's showing me the description attached to this. And when I click on it, I can see the description here as well, and I can edit it. You can also share your views by hitting Share View right here. And you can embed this view in a page somewhere, or you can even create a link to it so that people can access it. And you can edit the settings here for that link. Just by hitting Link Settings, you can see that there's lots of different ways that you can edit who is allowed to actually see this and how it's going to show up. For instance, if I didn't want to show the weekends here, I could hide weekends and generate new link, confirm. And now I can copy this link. And if I go to this link in a different tab, as you can see, it posts it in this nice published view so that people can actually access this and they can look at it, but they're not necessarily going to be able to come in here and edit things. They can just see the data that's in here. Not only are you able to change the overall appearance of your view, you're also able to filter, sort, and group the data within your views. To do this, I'm going to go back to our table of books, and in this table right here, I kind of like how it is already. I like being able to see everything. But if I wanted to, I could click on this drop-down arrow here, and I can duplicate this view. Now I can create a nice filtered, grouped, or sorted view out of this. So let's just call this Favorites. Now that it's named Favorites, I can come in here and I can add my favorites. And as you can see, it is going to update the favorites over here as well. But the difference is this favorites table right here, this favorites grid, is going to only show favorites. So if I only have this selected and I go to filter right here, I can add a condition, and then I can come in here and I can say where favorites is checked, and then I can click away. Now it's filtering it so that it just shows my favorite books. And if I go back to my table of all of my books and I add a favorite, and then go back to favorites, you'll see that it brings in all of those favorites that I've added, and it does it dynamically in an instant. Now let's say I wanted to add multiple conditions here. I could just add a new condition, and then I can select and or. So this is basically saying it has to be both, and or is saying it can be one or the other in order to show up here. I'm just going to say where favorite is checked and the rating is equal to 5 stars. So now it's not going to show anything, but if I go back to my table of books and I make sure that my favorites are marked as 5 stars, now it'll show me what things are my real favorites because it's looking at the rating and the favorite here. And if I change something here, it'll make it disappear because I just changed that to 4. Or if I remove my favorite, it will also remove it. Now, if I go back to my table of books and I make sure that this meets the criteria of our filter, it should add it back to favorites here for us. This will make it a lot easier. Once I build up a library of books here, I'm going to be able to see exactly what I've rated 5 stars and I've checked favorite on. Next, let's go ahead and duplicate table of books again, and I'm going to show you how grouping works. So for this example, I'm just going to group by status. So I'll call this table of status, click away, and we'll click on group. Now it's going to show us what we can group by right here. I'm just going to select status. And now, as you can see, it's broken this down into not started, reading, and complete. So now I can get a really good idea dynamically of which ones I've actually completed and what I'm actually reading right now, what's not started. And from this view, if I start reading a new book, I can just click on it, change it to reading. And as you can see, it just makes that other status disappear out of the grouping fields since there aren't any books that exist in that status. You can also layer in filtering on top of this. So I could just see my favorite books that I've completed or my favorite books that I'm reading, and it would eliminate everything else if I wanted to do that. Now, just like any good library, maybe I want to keep my books in alphabetical order so that people can find them. To do this, we can use sorting. So I'll go ahead and duplicate my table of books once again, and I will rename this just by double clicking it to alphabetical. Now, if I click on sort and then I click on books, it automatically sorts these alphabetically because it says A to Z. I can also do Z to A if I wanted to do it in reverse order, but I'll just stick with A to Z. Now, anything that I add in here, it's going to move it to its proper location. So if I type in, for instance, a new book, it should go to the front because it starts with A. Next, let's take a look at the styling features for your views. To access these, you'll be able to see color, row height adjustment, and you can also choose to hide specific fields. So we'll start with hide fields. I can click on hide fields here, and I can select which fields I want to hide. This doesn't mean that I'm deleting them, it just means that I'm hiding them. So let's hide everything except for user's opinion and the reading status and the description. All right, now everything is hidden and I can see this data a lot clearer in our alphabetical table. I'll go ahead and delete this A new book that we used as an example here. And hiding fields can be a great way to just kind of zero in on the information that you're looking for. This doesn't have the rating here, but it still pulls in the exceptional user's opinion. If I go to a different table, which holds the same data, and I change these around and then go back to alphabetical, as you can see, it's now following along with the user's opinion formula. The next styling feature is color. So if I click on color right here, as you can see, you will need to upgrade to the team plan. But if you do upgrade, you'll be able to set up conditional formatting. So you'll be able to see rows in a certain color if they meet a certain criteria. The final styling setup here is row height. So if I click on row height, I can change it to short, medium, tall, or extra tall. Let's say I wanted to see this description a little better. I could just change this to extra tall, and that would give me a little bit more of this description. I could even drag this out a bit, and I would see the entire description for each of these books. The next view that I wanted to share is the gallery view. So you can create that just by hitting gallery down here, and we can name it whatever we want. I'll just keep it as gallery for now, create new view. And as you can see, it automatically pulls in the cover photo for us right here. If I go to customize card, I can change what I'm seeing here. Like let's say I wanted to bring in the rating, then it would show the rating down here. And let's say I wanted to get rid of favorite. If you hide book cover down there, that's fine too. You'll just have to select the image field up here. And if you want it to fit into the screen, you can change this from crop to fit, and it will actually fit the book in your full screen. I would say this is one of the best ways to look at a database of books. And just to organize this a bit more, I could use what we did earlier with the sort feature and click on books. And now they're sorted alphabetically, and I can see the cover and a brief description of the book. The next view that we'll take a look at is the Kanban view. So if I click on the Kanban view and hit create new view, this works similar to grouping. I get to decide what I want to group it by. So let's just group it by status, and then let's just hit done. Now we have a nice Kanban board, so I can drag things along in the Kanban board based on what I've not started, based on what I'm reading, and based on what's complete. This is just basing it on that status property. And when I drag it, it's just changing the status of that item. If I hit customize cards, I can also bring in some of the other fields that we had before, such as the image field if I wanted to have a book cover on this one, and I can also do the crop and fit similar to the gallery. And I can also go down and add different fields like the rating, and maybe I wanted to pull in the authors. If I want to hide one of these, I can collapse the stack by hovering over it. So let's just go ahead and hide uncategorized since there's nothing in there. And now our Kanban view is ready to go. Another simple view that's similar to a table, but it's going to be a little bit cleaner, is the list view. So if I add a list view and hit create, as you can see, it's just going to pull in a nice clean list rather than a table. And I can also add some of my other fields here if I want to as well. So as I said, this looks very similar to the table, but it's just a much cleaner way of looking at it. The other nice thing that you can do with the list view is you can set a prefix field. So there's a few prefix fields that we have available here. I'm just going to select favorite because I think it makes the most sense. So I'll hit favorite. And now, as you can see, I can favorite books with this little check mark that shows up right next to the title of the book. Now, entering this data manually can be a bit of a time suck. So what if there was an easier way to add data to your Airtable? The answer is forms. So next, I'm going to show you how you can create forms using Airtable that fill out your tables for you. To add a form, you can just click on form in the bottom left-hand corner. It's kind of sectioned off from the other views here, as you can see, and it might pop this up right here. So I can just hit continue. And now it brings us into the form builder. So we have all of our fields here that fill this out, but if I wanted to remove certain ones, I could do that. I can just click on them and I could remove them. So let's just go ahead and remove a few of these just to simplify. So now we just have books, description, and status. Let's go ahead and change this form. So instead of new books, I'm just going to name it in more of a call to action. So I'm going to say add new books. And here in the description, I'll just write these books that you add go directly to the books table, just so it's very clear what's going on here. If you want to, you can add a logo and a cover image. I'm not going to be doing that right now because it's just styling. It's not necessary for showing how the forms work. Now, there's a few other things that you can edit, like you can add a redirect URL. This is the link that the form will bring the user to after they're done filling out this form. You can also add a button label. If you don't like submit, then you can change that to something else. And you can turn off the Airtable branding on the form that shows up down here. If you want to see who submitted the responses, then you can turn this on, but it would require that people have an Airtable account. So I'm going to leave that off. I can edit the visible fields just by clicking right here. And this is a quick way that you can add and remove fields as well. If you click into a specific field like status here, you can set a default value. So if I add default value, I could change it to not started because most likely this book hasn't been started. And if you want users to be able to edit that field, you can leave this on, or you can just turn it off so that it's not started by default. You can also decide if a field is required to be filled out. So let's just say that the books are required, but the description is not required. You can change the appearance based on what you're using here. You can add helper text on some of these if you want to, and then you can edit that. So you can just say describe the book below. And that is the basics of forms. As I said, you can style this. If you upgrade to the team plan, you get even more extra nice features with this. If you click on the preview button up here, it's going to show you exactly what this form is going to look like on the front end to somebody who's using it. And you can even type in and test it out. I'm going to turn preview off and I'm going to publish this form. Once you publish your form, you can set the sharing settings. I'm just going to set it to only users with base access, but if you wanted to, you could make it anyone on the web. And with team, you can even require a password to fill out the form. I'm just going to go with only users within the base account, and I'm going to either hit copy link or you can hit embed if you want to embed it into a web page. But I'm just going to hit copy link for now. And if I wanted to share this form with somebody, I would just hit enter into the URL bar. And now somebody can fill this out. So I'll just type in test book. And for the description, another test. Or actually, we'll leave the description blank since it's not required, just to show you how that works. And then I'll hit submit. And this is the screen that it will bring them to unless you set up a redirect with the team plan. Now I'll just hit submit another response, and as you can see, it brings me right back here. But let's see if this data is actually going into our table. I'm going to go back, click on my library, and as you can see, test book is now in here. And it shows up in all of the different views that we have for this table. Next, I'm going to dive into some of the more advanced Airtable topics, and we also are going to need a team plan to continue from this point on. Now, I will be covering a few things like automations, which are somewhat applied in the free plan, but if you want to get the most out of the rest of this tutorial, I recommend upgrading to follow along or just watching through to see what's possible with a paid Airtable account and then making your decision from there. First, let's take a look at scripting in Airtable. Scripting allows you to use JavaScript to automate tasks that normally would take a very long time. So we can connect with outside apps and APIs to bring those data points into our Airtable account as well, or to edit existing data in our Airtable account. For an example, I'm going to be creating a Pokédex. So for those of you who know about Pokemon, there's lots of different stats that come along with these Pokemon, and when you're adding them to a table like this, it would be nice to see their name, maybe their moves that they can do, and an image of them. So I have a single line text, another single line text, and an image. So this is where it's going to import all of this information for us. But doing this by hand would be extremely cumbersome. So what I'm going to do is use extensions. So I'm going to hit add an extension, click on scripting, and then hit add extension. This is going to load in an example of the scripting extension. I'm just going to hit get started and start from scratch. Now, if I click away, it will stay in the sidebar here, and I can run this test script. I can enter my name and hit next. And here it just prints welcome to the scripting extension, Carter. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to go back to the code and I'm going to delete what already exists there. And what we're going to be doing is accessing an outside API called pokaapi.co. So you can find it by going to pokaapi.co. And if you go to this API v2 tab on pokaapi.co, you should be able to read through the documentation and see exactly how this works. I already have a script created that's going to pull in the name of the Pokemon, their corresponding moves, and an image of said Pokemon. So let's go ahead and paste my script in here, and you can add any JavaScript that you want here and have it interact with your Airtable. I'm just going to hit run. And as you can see, it's giving me a nice progress report as it's importing these, and it's adding them all to my table. It's already added the first 49 and the second, and it's really cruised through, right? So it added all of these, and it did it in 3 separate chunks or 4 separate chunks. The thing is you can only import up to 50 records into Airtable at a time. So it had to do it in multiple runs here. This last run here only imported 4 records, as you can see. And it's even pulling in the images of said Pokemon in a sprite format. And I can open this up and I can read all of their different moves. Now, I really like the looks of this, but it would be nicer if we didn't see these little dashes between these names. Let's just find and replace all of these and add a space instead using a separate script. So I'll hit add an extension, scripting, add extension. I'll click through all of this here, start from scratch again, click away, and we'll go ahead and delete this information here. All right, so I've put in my script for the dash removal, and it's replaced them all with a blank space. So here where it used to say razor dash wind, now it just has a nice space in there. To tell you the truth, these scripts would have taken me 10 hours to create, but instead they took about 10 minutes to create because I used ChatGPT to do it. If you want some bonus content to see how I generated these scripts and how I did it reliably in under 10 minutes, then I highly recommend joining AI Pioneers. It's our free community where we upload our content a little bit earlier and we give you guys access to it ahead of time. And I also drop bonus content like the video of me showing you guys how to set up these Airtable scripts using ChatGPT. Another option if you're having trouble getting started with scripts is to use a script template. You can do this by hitting add an extension, go to scripts, and then you can see all of these script templates that they have by default. These are all created by Airtable. You can also add Airtable extensions. These are third-party companies that have come in and they've added special extensions for you. So for instance, you can visualize your ideas on a collaborative whiteboard in Miro by adding this extension. Or you can verify emails if you're trying to create a clean list of emails that are actually working, that aren't going to get sent to spam, then you can use this MailFloss email verifier. Let's say you have a massive CRM with all of your emails in there and you don't want to hurt your credibility score on your email marketing software. This would be a perfect way to avoid that. Next, let's take a look at automations inside of Airtable. To do this, I'm just going to close the extensions sidebar here, and I'm going to go over to the automations tab right next to the data tab up here. Now, automations are made up of triggers and actions. So if this happens, then we want this to happen. So if I hit add trigger, there's tons of different ways that you can trigger here. To make this make a little bit more sense, I'm going to add a status to each of these Pokemon. So we'll go to the single select, I'll call this status. And to make this a true Pokedex, I'm just going to list whether I've seen the Pokemon or whether I've caught the Pokemon, or if I haven't seen them at all. So I'm going to type not seen, then I'll also add seen, and I'll do caught. So we'll go red, yellow, green, and I'll go ahead and hit save. Now I'm going to create another table, and we'll start from scratch, and I'll call it my inventory. And we'll just type in Pokemon, save, and I'll go ahead and delete these fields. And I'm also going to add a created time. This is going to be when I caught the Pokemon. So it'll be caught on, and it's going to show when that record got added to this table. So I'll go ahead and delete these ones. And what we want this automation to do is when I change this status over here to caught, I want it to automatically update my inventory and say when that was caught. So we'll head back over to the automations tab, and I'll add a trigger, and I'll say when record matches conditions. We'll select the table, Pokemon, and I'll add a condition here. Now the condition is basically just saying this needs to happen in order for the action to take place. So when the status is caught. And now we can move on to the action. So if I hit this button right here, I'm going to select create record, and I'm going to select the inventory table. Now for choose field, I'm going to select Pokemon. Now I'll hit this plus button and I'll click name, and that's going to pull in the name from the Pokedex into my Pokemon table. And since it's being created, it's automatically going to add the created time. So let's just close this, turn on my automation, and this should be ready to go. I can just go back to my data and I should be able to mark something as caught. And then once it's all loaded, I can go over to my inventory, refresh. And after refreshing a couple times and waiting for a moment, it does appear here at 5:04 p.m. on 12/29/2024. Now imagine I wanted to create a front end page where I can show my overall Pokedex and I can show my inventory. To do this, we can use Airtable's interfaces. Interfaces are basically just like pages, but they're more user-friendly. So you can think of yourself as the developer of your Airtable, and the interface is what the user sees on the other end. It's kind of like a dashboard of pages that makes it more user-friendly. So you can use interfaces for yourself, or for your team, or for the general public. They're just a better way to look at the data. So to use interfaces, you're just going to go to the interfaces tab here, and you can build out a page that looks something like this. I'm just going to hit start building, and we'll go ahead and build an interface. You can select an icon here if you want to, and I'm just going to call this my Pokemon pages. I'll hit next, and it asks you to choose a layout. What I like to do is start with a blank canvas. This just allows me to pull in anything that I want. Now I'll go ahead and hit finish, and we can just start dragging and dropping things into here. So I'll drag in a grid, and right now the source is set to Pokemon, but I'll just change this to inventory so that I can see my exact inventory, and we can change the size of this so that it's not necessarily taking up a bunch of space. And I'll actually change this to a list because I think it'll look a little bit cleaner. And we can edit this a bit, just get it nice and compact, and then drag it down. And then let's go ahead and add a gallery. So this is going to be a gallery of the overall Pokedex. So we can keep it at Pokemon. And here, as you can see, as I scroll down here, I can go through the pages and I can see all of the Pokemon in the Pokedex. We'll want to make sure that this is view only so that people can't edit the Pokedex, only I can. And we'll do the same with my list here, view only. Now, if I hit publish and I keep that selected, just hit publish and hit share, go to share publicly. invite by link, create new link, read only. We'll allow access to the Pokedex base, and it'll allow any email address. Now I'll create the link, and I'll go ahead and copy this link. And if I paste it and hit search, now as you can see, I get this nice front end view that has all of my data available. And people aren't able to edit it because of the way I set up the settings. So now people can just see my inventory and all of the Pokemon in the Pokedex along with their status here. As you can see, Bulbasaur is caught, so he's in this database here. So I can just click around here and I can see everything that the Pokedex has to offer. If you enjoyed this full tutorial and you want to see how you can connect Airtable to all of your other data sources so that you can bring all of your data into one unified place, I highly recommend checking out my brother's tutorial that he made on our input database. This is a place where you can just capture all of your inputs, whether you're talking to Siri and you want something to pop into Airtable just by transcribing your voice into the phone, or maybe you want every time a YouTube video is uploaded for it to go into your Airtable and transcribe into a script, or maybe you even want some AI steps in between and some AI automations. This video is the one that you want to look out for. And remember, we're going to be giving away all of our best resources, my brother and myself, in the AI Pioneers community. So check out that free community using the link below if you haven't already. I hope you enjoyed this full Airtable tutorial, and we'll see you in the next one.